Welcome to Creative Cooking. Today we're making whiskey roasted yams, otherwise known as sweet potatoes. And we're going to be making some juicy pork chops. So let's get right into it. First you want to get a couple of sweet potatoes, or yams, and peel them. Then we want to slice them. And how thick, you might ask? Well, 3/8 of an inch to about 1/2 inch thick, just like that. And when you're done with that, we're going to make a whiskey sauce with 1/4 cup of dark brown sugar. We're also going to add in 1/4 teaspoon of chili powder. That's right, chili powder. Thought I'd do something different, but you can use cinnamon. But the real star of the show is not the black pepper and not the salt, but rather the whiskey. And any brand of whiskey will do. Just pour some into the bowl, give it a little mix, and you only need to add just enough to soften up that sugar. And don't worry, the alcohol cooks out. That will blend together with the juices from the sweet potatoes in this gratin dish. Now you can use any good baking dish, but I figured I'd use this one because it's the right size and I can serve it straight to the table without having to take it out. So we'll go ahead and we'll start layering these into the dish, nice and flat. But of course, you're trying to put a round peg in a square hole and you're gonna have a lot of spaces in between. So that's easy enough to remedy. Just cut them into half moons or pie wedges, and you can start to assemble your little jigsaw puzzle, right? It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You want everything to fit. And then continue making your layers. If you want to season with a little bit of salt between the layers, go right ahead. And hopefully you've been preheating your oven to 400 degrees while doing all of this. And once you get everything into that dish, look at that. Just fit. It's perfect. So we're going to go ahead and pour that whiskey sauce over the top of these. And that will just dribble down into the cracks and crevices, nooks and crannies. And it'll actually blend with the natural juices from the potatoes themselves. You could also substitute with maple syrup. It doesn't have to be brown sugar. That's just the way that I prefer to do it. So once you get that all in there, you need to cover it up with some aluminum foil. Unless, of course, you have a casserole dish that has a glass lid, in which case you don't need the foil. But these gratin dishes never come with a lid, so we'll go ahead and seal it. Seal it nice and tight all the way around, just like that. And then pop it in the oven, 400 degrees for about 45 minutes. So while that's going on, we want to make some pork chops. And these are center cut pork chops, and I intend to bread them. So it's very important to remove all of the excess fat around the outside of the pork chops. I find that using kitchen shears does a really good job of doing that trimming. Not only can you trim the outsides, but if you had to get into the inside of it a little bit, the scissors cut right through. And you don't have to worry about hurting yourself with a sharp knife. Of course, if you were going to do it with a knife, you might want to do it while they're semi-frozen. It's a little bit easier that way and much safer. So now that you've done that with all your pork chops, go ahead and season. I like to season directly with salt and pepper. I prefer not to use seasoned flour, although you can. It's better to control the seasoning and make sure that it comes in contact with the meat and that you get both sides. Then you need to dust these with some all-purpose flour. Just general all-purpose flour. And flip them over. Make sure that you get the other side and along the edges. Because then in the next step, in the breading process, is we're going to dip them in egg. Dipping them in eggs will form the base for the breadcrumbs. And here I'm using seasoned breadcrumbs. These are the Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. And they're fine breadcrumbs. And people say, well, why don't you use panko? Well, I actually prefer to use this. This does a better job of sealing in the meat. And of course, we're not going to dip them once. We're going to dip them twice. We're going to re-dip them in the egg, which is going to create another moist surface for another layer of breadcrumbs. So the finer breadcrumbs, in my opinion, do a better job of sealing the pork chop. so that when we cook it, all those delicious juices stay inside, and you do not end up with a tough, rubbery, tastes like leather, feels like leather pork chop. You want something that's moist and juicy, and that's exactly what you'll get with this method. Then you'll want to use an oven-proof skillet, such as this iron skillet. If you have a good stainless steel one with fireproof handles, go ahead and use it. I like my iron skillets though, they do a great job. And I'm frying in olive oil. Some people say, well, olive oil has a high smoking point. Well, that's okay. I like the flavor of the olive oil much better than just regular vegetable oil. And bear in mind too, the breadcrumbs are going to absorb some of that oil, so you'll have to add a little bit in. And I like to dribble it right over the top because that olive oil really does give these pork chops a delicious flavor. Now, what's important to note is that we're not actually cooking the pork chops on the stovetop. We're just browning the outsides. We're giving it a little bit of a head start. And then we're going to go ahead and put a little more oil on it. Yeah, a little more oil. That's right, folks. I love it. By now, the sweet potatoes are done, so go ahead and take those out of the oven and put your pork chops in. They'll only need to be in there for about 20 minutes, 400 degrees or less. And you can check the doneness on the potatoes when a paring knife just slips straight through without any resistance. Those potatoes are done. But wait, we're not going to just put these away just yet. You see all that nice juice that's in the bottom of the dish? Well, we want to try to strain that out, put it into a container so we can pour it right back over the top of these before we bring it to the table. And those pork chops, wow, they're nice and crispy, golden, and delicious. Oh, I can't wait. So go ahead, strain out that juice. That's not juice. It's just a combination of the moisture from the potatoes, the sweetness of the potatoes, the brown sugar, the whiskey, and the spices. And we're just going to pour that right over the top. Yams prepared this way will go with just about anything, so I really do hope that you give it a try. And don't forget to subscribe for more great videos made for people who like to cook. Until then, bon appetit.